Hello, welcome back to the Hype School. This is our very first Hype School live stream. We haven't done any live streaming since 2020 when it was still called Friday Sessions. And the plan today, I guess, is to allow you to ask some questions or make some suggestions for some topics that we might want to get into. And yeah, if not, I'm sure I've got some bits and pieces that I could get into myself. But yeah, what I can't see, we've got High School Stu here running the stream, and like I say, this is the first time that we've had a chance to do this. One of the slightly frustrating part about streaming is it's very difficult to do a dress rehearsal because you end up going live, as I found out last week. Stu, I can't see any of the comments if there's any coming in yet. No comments. Okay, cool. Right. I think if nobody's asking any questions, just not totally sure if the comments should be coming up there. Okay, cool. Yeah, if nobody's got any immediate questions at the start of the stream, my battle plan today was to go through the Disguise workflow. We've, over the course of a number of sort of main channel videos, we have been showing you lots of different sort of 5-minute episodes of things that you can go and do in Disguise. I have challenged myself by setting up a fresh machine with no assets or anything like that on this. So the benefit of that is going to be you are going to get to see everything that we need to use today. We're going to have to make. And yeah, should we head over to my desktop and have a quick look at? Oh, only 8 days left on my license. That's good. Okay, fantastic. So, like I say, in the absence of any questions, we're going to go through warts and all the setting up a Disguise project right from the very beginning, and allow you to see sort of every step without any cleverly or conveniently pre-made assets that we've kind of put together that we would do if we were doing this for like a long form tutorial. So. First thing is prior to the stream, have downloaded the latest version of Disguise. I did that by going to download.disguise.1, installed that, and I've opened D3 Manager. This is what you get to see when it's installed brand new. If you were on a Disguise machine, this path would probably be to your media drive. The machine that it's like one of our new projects machines, only has, I haven't installed a media array in this yet. So the default location just in my documents folder is going to be fine for what we're going to do today. I'm going to create a new project. So let's call this Office Hours 1. That's the stream we're doing today. And yeah, that's created our sort of base project. If I right click on that and open the folder, it's annoying that it's ended up inside of my OneDrive. I need to remove OneDrive for this. So if I open up the project by right clicking on it and saying open folder, this is the standard Disguise folder structure you're going to get when you create a new project. The objects folder is the one that we care about the most, and inside of that is a list of the different types of media that Disguise supports and sort of compartmentalizes those. The ones that we're likely to want to get into in a little bit is going to be things like video file, audio file, maybe we'll even make some meshes, but let's see how quickly we kind of get into that. So yeah, let's just jump straight in and have a look at what we need to do inside our new Disguise project. And this is the bit that in a tutorial we'd normally just cut out. We wouldn't make you wait while the software loads. Fantastic. Okay, so here we are inside our default disguise project. If you've used it before, this should feel very familiar to you. And I'm just going to give you a very quick sort of guided tour before we start working inside it. So we can move around our 3D interface by left clicking on, we need to click on an asset. So either like clicking on a screen, or this person we call a puck. We can click on him or her, and we can drag a mouse around to orbit around the space. And your orbit point is the place that you click. So if I sort of click up there, it's going to orbit around that corner of the surface. I can zoom in and out, so I can use my mouse wheel. That's going to allow me to zoom in and out. And I can right click and scroll, and that does the same. If I press the mouse, so by pressing my mouse button down, I can pan around. And those are likely to be the main ways in which you're going to want to navigate around your 3D space. There's also a picker. So right in the right-hand corner, you can see the symbol for it there. That's more for moving assets around in the space. So I could grab an axis of the surface, I think, and then Control Z allows me to undo that. Same for things like rotate. Again, not truly useful in this moment. We could scale. I'd need to grab one of these handles, so there we go. So yeah, it's worth knowing that there's a couple of ways to do that. I find it a little bit kind of irritating to have this just turned on. So yeah, I'll basically normally turn that off whilst we're working in the sort of building inside of this stuff. Stu's alerted me to a comment. We'd love to hear about Notch media server workflows and things like how to prep a Notch block. Yeah, we could definitely do that. Something that I think I probably wanted to say at the start, which I missed out, was that we're going to try and show you something for an hour tonight, and hoping that if you add some comments and some ideas of things that you want to do, if we don't get to a point where we can kind of look at the thing that you're asking about, what we'll do is we'll record all these, and we'll either bring them back in the next live session that we do, or we'll turn it into like a long form tutorial. So hopefully anything that you ask will eventually turn into something that we can be able to share with you. There's just a limitation to what we're able to do in an hour sort of this evening. So yeah, we'll get into that. In fact, maybe we'll make some Notch content to bring into our disguise project that we're going here. Let me continue talking about this, since we've kind of got going with it. So we've loaded our Notch project. Notch, that's a bit of a slip. We've loaded our disguise project, and we've navigated around our space. We've had a little look at the controls that we can kind of bring up, the gimbal. The thing to bring assets in and out of your project, you'll need to do them via the stage menu. So these, again, a little bit like the folders that we had outside of the disguise. These are headings of the type of assets that you might want to bring into your disguise project. So at the top here, we have some basic sort of scene information. Then moving down, we have things like LED screens, DMX screens and lights, projection surfaces. Disguise differentiates between projection surfaces and LED screens. So you have sort of separate places to load those things depending on how you're anticipating using that, that surface or that LED screen. We can obviously add projectors to point at those projection surfaces. And then we have, I'd say these are somewhat lesser used. Cameras start to help you build out your scene for things like XR and AR stuff. And that's where MR sets. Skeletons are about tracking the movement of sort of humans, and that could be brought in. Also, I think that in the latest version, the Disguise now supports bone structures, so we can deform 3D models within the space by bringing in automation data and stuff like that to help us understand how assets might be changing shape kind of on your stage. So that's what skeletons are about. So let's build ourselves a quick stage, and then we can go and have a look at maybe bringing some notch stuff in. So I don't know that I want a surface. I don't think this is a projection show, so we can also lose our projector. I'm going to bring in an LED screen, and we'll make, let's just be fairly simple and boring. Let's just make a or center screen. So as well as our gimbal here that we could use to kind of change the shape of our screens and assets inside the server, by right-clicking on it, you can bring up the menu that's associated with the asset and type in the numbers so that you are using kind of exact figures. So normally we would grab these from the LED product that we were using. So if this was like a Row screen or something, we'd go to the Row website and we would work out what our width and height were based on the number of panels that were being rigged. Right now we're working in a totally theoretical world, so the thing that means more to us than our exact size is just keeping everything in ratio. So let's just make this fairly simple. Oh, I haven't got my numlock on, so let's make this 8 by 4.5, which I know is a 16:9 resolution, and then let's give it a fairly standard HD 16:9. Sorry, 8 by 4.5 is a 16:9 aspect ratio. I'm going to give that a standard HD 16:9 resolution to go with it. We can position that wherever we want in the space, again with our gimbal. Just for my mild OCD, I'm just going to give that a round number. And then, yeah, if we're going to do some notch stuff, let's create some iMac screens too. So let's do iMac left. What should we do? It's kind of trendy to do portrait screens at the moment. So should we do, we'll do the kind of, what's that, 4.5. So let's make this 4.5 tall. So it's worth mentioning these are our dimensions in 3D. So X being left to right, the second one being Y, up and down. And then if this was a model that had any depth, we'd be able to change the scale of that with the third column there. But let's make this 4.5. So it's the same size as our center screen. Let's just have a look from the top to make sure they're in line. We can mathematically make sure they're in line by setting them to the same height. And then, I don't know, that would be a true 16:9. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. So there's one of our camera screens, and then again, let's set this to a round number to keep my brain calm. I'm going to now we've set that up and we've made that. I think the thing we're missing here is our resolution. So let's make that again a 16:9 resolution. 1080 by 1920, so that's 1080 pixels wide by 1920 tall. We can now right click this and duplicate it. So we're now going to make iMag right. And we can use our maths. Again, we could move this around in our gimbal, but is gimbal the right word for that? I'm not totally sure. Again, we can find that screen, that menu that allows us to change the parameters of the asset by, as well, right-clicking on the object. You can also right-click in the stage menu here. So bring that up. The left iMac screen is at -6 meters. So to make our stage symmetrical, we need to make this positive 6 meters. So there we go. So now we're gonna move, I guess, towards being able to do some notch stuff here. But let's just quickly talk about mapping some content to this. So we can create our timeline runs along the bottom of our screen here, and if you've used anything like Final Cut or Premiere, this will hopefully feel very familiar to you. It essentially runs left to right, with time being its kind of main base. And we can add layers to the timeline by right-clicking at moving the playhead to wherever we'd like that layer to start, and then we can right-click, say new layer. We could give it a name. So let's make this just a center content. So we've told this guys that we want a layer, and we've given it a name, but it's now asking us which type of layer would we like to add to this. So let's just add a simple video layer. By default, the mapping governs where on the stage would we like to place this content. And by default, when you're building your Disguise project, it's going to default to the last object that you created. So right now, if we added, let's add George to the stage, he's being mapped, and we can modify our mapping by changing this value here. So if we wanted him to go in the center, then that's pretty easy. Let's make iMag. So I'm just going to make a video layer that maps the same content to both iMag screens. Again, we want, I right-clicked and gave it the name iMag, and then here, the type of layer. In order to make life a little bit easier, you can use the search bar and just narrow down the list of. So if I typed all the words in, it gives me all the different types of layers with the word video in. So the default mappings that get created are essentially a direct mapping for each of the surfaces that you've got, and they get created in the moment where we generate those surfaces by adding them to the stage here. So if I want my content to be sent to both of these screens, then we need to generate a new mapping that's going to do that. So the easiest way to do that, let's bring some content in. Let's use Ada, I guess. So again, now that we've started using this mapping, when I create a new layer here, it's now going to switch to the last used mapping. So if you're doing a lot of work in the same screen, that becomes very handy. But like I mentioned, we're going to need to create a new mapping in order to be able to send the content where we want. So new mapping, we're going to give this a name. So let's name it something descriptive, like both iMag. And now there's a couple of ways that we could kind of do this. I think probably the easiest is to stick with the direct mapping. So we can create that and add the screens that we want the direct mapping to send to. So iMag left and iMag right. The other way we could do this, which would give us a little bit more control, would be to create a feed mapping. So I'll just show you that very quickly. It essentially gets the same results, but it's good to know a few different ways to do things. Let's call this both iMag, and then let's remind ourselves that it's a feed. Okay, so it did that wrong, and the reason it did that wrong is instead of typing in the new mapping box, I made the mistake that is very easy to make, which is I typed in the new indirection box. So I've created a new indirection there. A little bit annoying and not going to get to what we want. So let's select the correct box this time. New mapping, both iMag feed. Okay, so the way the feed mapping works is we can now, same way as we did with our direct mapping, choose the surfaces that we want to send our content to. We also need to give it a resolution. So we know, because we just created them, that the screens that we're sending the content to are 1080 by 1920. So let's make our mapping match. So that's 1080 by, and tab to move to the next box, 1920. That's great. We can then use the Alt key on the keyboard to drag from our content space down into our screen space, and we can do that. So we've now essentially got the same thing as we had with the direct map. The thing about the direct map is, so if we just go back to the direct map, that's it. That same content is going to both, and there's no way in which we can really modify that if we want to make some changes later on. The thing about the feed map is, let's say we get into a space and we need to modify just one of those. I was expecting it to update. Okay. So the reason the stage hasn't updated is what I've done is I'm modifying the feed mapping, but I'm still sending the direct map to the actual screens. So we can reselect our feed map. So here we go. This is essentially what I'm showing you, is that if I can't for the life of me understand why you would want to chop your content up like this for a show, but we can make these modifications. So if it was like, for example, we go to a venue where it's like we have like a square screen or something like that, and we just want to sort of remap our output, then that would be something that would be easy to do with a feed map and much harder to do. See, we can sort of stretch that content and do all kinds of things to it. Sort of cut it in half as well if you wanted to. So yeah, there's lots of changes that you can make in the feed map. So programming a show with feed maps, I'm just going to undo some of these changes, can allow you a lot of flexibility later. In the undo process, I can see what I've done is set this back to my direct map. Okay. So in order to make this a little bit more interesting for those of you who have turned up to hang out with us this evening, let's try and move this into some of the questions. And the one we were asked about is preparing Notch and bring it into Disguise. So I'm going to quit Disguise. And one of the things that I know, I'm just going to disappear off camera, is that I actually haven't got a Notch dongle plugged into my projects machine. So I just need to grab that out of my laptop. Here we go. Oh, that's done something fairly strange. Cool. So, as I mentioned, this is a fairly new project machine for us, so we haven't got a huge amount of stuff set up. For example, I don't know whether I've got Builder installed. Doesn't look like it. Okay, I mean, this is probably useful for doing that download. I did say I was going to make it hard for myself by forcing myself to show you the whole process, warts and all. So we've gone to the Notch website into the downloads area, and this is how fast our internet connection is while we're streaming. So yeah, are those maps? I'm just seeing a comment that Stu's highlighting. Are those maps able to be non-rectangular? Yeah, we could definitely look at that. There are different mapping types. So the direct maps and the feed maps are by default 2D, so therefore rectangular. There aren't ways to use the vertices as a map, but there are definitely other. We can kind of get, if we don't get into that today, we can definitely do that in a further tutorial, or maybe the next live. We need to have a little think about when we're going to do our next live, because I think this is something that so long as you would like to turn up to them, we want to do fairly regularly. So cool. Okay, while I've been babbling Notch is downloaded. Let's just very quickly install that. So the other thing that we're going to need in order to generate probably something I think we'll probably create like an IMAG effect, is just some content to be our kind of basis for this. So the place I like to kind of get my stock content from is storyblocks.com. I'm just going to have to sign in order to be able to get into my account. There we go. And then let's sort of find a guitarist or something like that. I mean, this guy's pretty cool, but he's you know, very stylized. That's the one. If you've seen the Notch IMAG tutorial that we did really recently, that's the one I actually used for there. So let's try and find something a little bit different. This guy could be good. Let's download this. HD is probably fine for what we need, certainly on the stream. Obviously, if you're creating for live, I mean, what I would do if I was creating a notch effect for a band, then I would probably talk to their team about getting some old like show footage, because there's nothing that's going to be really better than being able to work with the kind of content that the show it's designed for. So, oh, I'm babbling today, aren't I? Good. Okay, so we've now got Builder installed, which is good, and it's recognised my dongle. So we're doing well. Great. Okay. So, like as I mentioned, we were just creating a new layer. IMAG FX, something like that. Okay, so as I mentioned, we did a very recent tutorial on creating camera effects in Notch. So I'm probably going to blast through this. I'd say if you're interested in getting into Notch and you've perhaps never used it before, then that would be a good place to start. Or we've also done a video, I think it was last year, which we called Your First Day in Notch, where I did a bit more of a guided tour of what the interface is. So, a little drink. There we go. Those would both be great videos to kind of do if you want to sort of do a bit more of a deep dive. I'm just going to kind of, we can't see all the text there, so I'm just going to try and get things. Oh, this is cracking live entertainment, isn't it? Oh, I don't know what's going on. All right, we'll come back to that. So I'm going to bring in the guitarist that we just downloaded. Notch is going to want to transcode that. Thankfully, it's not a huge amount of frames, and we've got a 4090 in this machine, so it's going to go pretty quick. In fact, I could speed that up. Okay, so it's converted that file to Notch LC, which is going to be like more optimal for Notch to be able to use. We can drag that into our node graph, and then in order to be able to see it in our viewport, we're going to have like an image 2D. So this essentially just gives us a 2D canvas to play this content back. So I'm going to parent that to the root. If I wanted to remove that parent to show you something else, I could also have pressed, selected that and pressed Control R. That would have done the same. So we now have an empty image 2D, and I'm going to bring our content, which is inside this video loader, into that. The first port there gives us. So we've got our clean content. So camera effects are the things you're likely to use the most are post effects in order to modify the look and feel of your effect. and we can hang them directly off our video loader. So if we, I don't know, let's see, let's do something like really obvious. Let's just do like an edge detect. So by clicking in this box up here, I can type in the name of the node. So a part of getting good at Notch is kind of learning the kind of things that you might want to sort of grab hold of. So we can connect that, and we can see the effect straight away. That's kind of really obvious, and that's fine. We can keep stacking them up. So what else might we want to do? Or is that too much? Just add that on top. So I've changed. What I've done there is changed the. There we go. That's the handle I was looking for before. I changed the blend mode to sort of stick the edge detect on top. So what I was going to say is we can add our node to the actual video loader, but in order to kind of keep this a little bit cleaner, I'm going to grab a video null. So if we ever need to use a copy of the video, what this is doing is it's changing this. So if let's turn that edge detect back to like multiply. So by going shift and left click, you can see inside the node what's going on. So this edge detect is actually modifying this copy of the video, which means that if we ever needed to use the video elsewhere in our look, we don't have a clean version of this anymore. So if we were to take if we were able to take our video input and then pass it into a video null. So what this is doing is just taking a copy of it, and I can shift and double click that so that we can see the copy. Now I can apply the edge detect to that copy, and we still keep our kind of clean version here. And then, yeah, if we want to pass that into, and one of the ways, let's make this kind of less heavy by doing this additively. One of the ways in which this is kind of really useful is, yeah, if I do NVIDIA background removal. Oh, this could be difficult. If I install the SDK. No. All right, let's not go down that rabbit hole. We'll install the SDK, and next time we do one of these things, we'll look at background removal, because we're going to totally derail this tutorial. This is just like the least exciting notch effect I think I've ever made. What else could we do with this? There's loads of edge effects. Well, let's maybe not do a post effect. Let's do a clone to image. These are always quite fun. So Control R to parent that to the root, and then get a shape 3D. It's less important when we're doing a cloned image to have that null, but it's not really hurting us. So let's just keep that there. So we've now created our camera effect using a set of 3D primitives. It's all squashed up. So let's do image scale. Let's make it, and then. Again, so these are all tricks that that I showed you when we did the camera effects tutorial a week or two ago. And they clone offset by brightness. This is the thing that makes this effect kind of pop, is that it's modifying the z-axis of the sphere that we're using to create this. So right now, we're not showing you anything that we haven't kind of done before, and the question really is what's the workflow for kind of moving this between sort of notch and disguise. So the first thing to mention is you want to try and limit the number of notch blocks that you have in your Disguise project. Each one gets loaded into memory when you start your Disguise project, and there's a certain footprint that each notch block takes up regardless of what's loaded into it. So in order to minimize that, you want to try and move all your effects into a single block. So if we look at our timeline here, you see that this layer is the one that we just created with our clone to image. I'd normally, that's a look basically, this layer is a look. And I would, if I opened up a notch block for like an artist or something, I'd have a layer for every look that we want to use. It might be a layer for every song if we only use one look per song. Sometimes we'll use a layer, like 2 or 3 different layers within a song. So all of those would just get listed down here. So yeah, combine your everything into a single block. If you are working with multiple different collaborators, what you could do is you can get your buddy to work on a couple of songs, and then if you come up to File and Merge Projects, and then you'd be able to basically bring his project inside of yours and create one master project with all the different layers in. I'm working kind of dangerously because I'm working without saving this. So let's do some hideous and just save it down to the desktop. Let's go. Let's go office hours. So I've just saved my DFX file. That's essentially my notch project, but that's not something that we can load into Disguise. In order to be able to do that, we need to compile the block. So let's imagine that we have all the different looks that we want here. We compile block from media server, and then we need to give this a location. Again, office, it's grabbed the name from the name of the project. Office hours is fine for what we want to do. And then DFX DLL. So this is the type of file that we would bring into our Disguise project. So again, I'm going to do that hideous thing of saving it onto the desktop. And I've already made a big mistake here. So if we were to load this into our Disguise project, we wouldn't be able to use it. And the reason that we can't use this is that we don't have our video loader exposed. So we wouldn't be able to pass our video into the block. So in order to expose parameters inside of Disguise, inside of Notch for Disguise, go into this question mark here, expose property. Now these are the names, we'll see these when we end up back inside of Disguise. These are the names that we will see. And then there's, I mean, you can expose as much as you would like. What would happen if we brought this into Disguise right away? This would be the look that we could get, and we wouldn't be able to make any changes to that. We could go in and let's think. How would we change this? Oh, maybe if we modify like the sphere. So we can do that just in our builder at the moment. So we could make them. So we could go in. Let's set that back to 1. We could go in and expose the properties here by going into our sphere and exposing that there. The thing about that is that once we click off that, there's no real way from within Builder to really know that that has exposed properties. So what I would say is a good practice is if you create an envelope modifier, the way I would structure my project is, with the exception of the video loader, as that's somewhat expected to be exposed, I would then create an envelope modifier for each of my exposed parameters. So if I grab this, I can attach that to my scale X, and then if I modify that envelope modifier, you can see that it's controlling the scale X, and we can press F5 scale X and label it, and then I'd expose this value. So what I would do here is if we do one for each one, sort of X, Y, Z, if we do each one of those, we're going to end up with sort of 3 different headings inside of disguise. So what I will do here is make these all the same group. So I'm going to make the name of the parameter that we want to change. We're going to make that scale X, and then we're going to call this shape scale. I'm going to copy that, and then make exposed. So I've copied my envelope modifier here. If I was to not make my exposed properties unique, then every time I change this, any other matching properties would follow suit. So we do want to make them unique if they're going to control different things. Let's do it one more time for X, Y, Z, and then F5 to change that. And right now we're just labeling our modifiers, and we can go in and hook these up to the parameters that we want to control. This is a somewhat unimaginative effect, but hopefully the principle that I'm showing you here is kind of useful. So we can maybe a future live, we can just sit and try and make something really pretty. Okay, so now I've gone into each one. We've kept our exposed group name as shape scale, and we'll see why that was important when we get into disguise. And then I've modified each of the exposed names. So this is the parameter that we are going to modify. So with a selection of modified parameters, I'm going to set each of these values to 0, so they're kind of reset. And the video loader exposed. Now we're ready to take this into disguise. So let's go back and compile our block media server again. This is the one that we created before. We'll just overwrite that since we never actually used it. And there we go, that's all done. So as I mentioned right at the top, when we created our disguise project, we can right click and open the folder. We actually, because we've ran this project now, have a couple of extra. We have like a history and a calibration folder that didn't exist when we looked at that before. We can go into objects, and what we're adding here is a notch block. So we're going to notch file. I'm going to press Control N on my keyboard. That's just a Windows shortcut for creating a new Explorer window. Go to navigate to the desktop to grab this, and we can copy that in there. The other thing that's going to be really useful in order to use this in disguise is going to be our content. So the content that we used. Thankfully, the transcoded version of this that Notch created is left in the same folder. So this is just where I downloaded it. But let's throw that into our video file folder so we can use that inside of disguise. Oh, I tried to move it, that's why. So it tried to move that file, which I was unhappy about because it's open enough, but we can copy that. So great, okay. Let's reopen disguise and click that too many times. There we go. Right, let's have a little look at some comments while writing that too. Look, working in Blender to create unique UV maps. I can already see that we've been chatting away here for nearly 50 minutes. So I think moving into Blender now is going to be on the scope of this session today, but we can definitely look at creating UVs in Blender. That's definitely, yeah, I agree that a lot of UV tutorials are very video game oriented, so we could totally create something that was much more geared towards working in media servers. I mean, Disguise is definitely the one that I excel at most, but we could also look at using 3D objects in other media servers. So as I've been chatting away, Disguise is reloaded, and we're going to look at bringing our Notch content into our stage here. So let's let's modify the sort of setup of the queue that we created before. So again, just for my OCD, I'm going to line that up with a marker on the timeline. Alt S allowed me to split the timeline, and that is to do with the way that the play modes work. So when there are splits, the play to end of section will kind of like honor that. So we're just creating a fairly neat queue there. I'm going to do the same at the end of this content. So let's just tidy it up. Nothing wrong with what we've created there. Let's leave George in the center because he's beautiful, and move into adding our notch for our IMAG. So right now, I'm just going to pull our video layer out of the way, and we're going to create a new one. As well as right-clicking on the timeline, I could press Control N. That would give me a new layer. If I press Tab, that takes my cursor by N by default is actually Note, and it'll bring me in there. So if I do Control N and Note, I could then, this is a note. So that's what Control N as a shortcut is designed for. Let's delete that. But if you go Control N, Tab, that brings you up to the new layer. We're gonna notch. The other thing that you could do there is Control L. That takes you directly into your layer select, and you just end up with the default name for that, so you don't get to name it. So let's go notch. Cool. Okay. So we've created a new notch layer. Let's bring the playhead back in so that we can see that. By default, it's got nothing selected, so we need to select our notch file. This wouldn't turn up if we hadn't copied this into the folder structure. So that's good. Let's have a look at where we're going to send that. So we're going to use our feed mapping for both our IMAG. We can kind of see that that's worked because the nothing that's playing inside of the notch. We can definitely see that right there. As I was talking before, let's actually make this work before I start babbling on about the exposed parameters. In order for our video content or incoming camera signals to be used inside of the notch block, we actually have to kind of load them onto the timeline first. So if we do, again, I'm going to create a new layer that will load our what would be our camera signals, but we're going to use that file that we downloaded earlier. So let's just call that cam for our video input, and again V for video file. There is a stacking order that goes from kind of top to bottom here. So for example, with the same mapping selected, if I go and find our guitarist, that's above the notch layer, and we don't want that. We want to see the notch version of this. So you could right click this and say move down. That would take it to where we were. Or what I normally like to do, Control Alt and the up and down keys on the keyboard allow you to change the stacking order of layers. So let's get that below our notch layer, and then we need to pass that into our notch layer for our notch block to modify it. So in order to do that, Alt on the keyboard, click where you come from, which is the camera layer, into the layer that you want to head to, and it will create that link. Let's have a look at what we're seeing here. So we created this is an interesting example of why creating things as feed mappings might be quite important. We created this 16:9. So in fact, if we pop back into, my machine's going to totally freak out. Do that. You see that our project settings in Notch, we created this in 16:9. So when we bring this back into Skies, it's not been designed within the ratio that we which I should have known about because I invented all these things in our hypothetical project. But we can fix this if my machine allows me to get back into this. So we can fix this. Something to mention, so we're passing our camera into our notch layer here. We could also just kind of select that if we didn't want to pass in via there. You can also select a texture, but that makes a lot less sense because these are all still images and we actually want moving pictures. Let's have a little look here. We could create part of the problem that we've got is the effect that we created is a 3D effect. So whilst we could easily modify the 2D aspects of this, the 3D primitives that make up the camera image that we're using are a fixed size in space, and they have a kind of a fixed camera looking at them, which means that we can't really just kind of pull that around. But I think it would be a really useful exercise in working out. We've seen that this hasn't really worked for us. Let's go and see how we can fix this. So I'm going to exit out of D3, out of Disguise. We aim to talk for about an hour. We're almost at the end of that, so this is going to be a bit of a whistle-stop tour on how to make some modifications to this. So just waiting for Disguise to quit, and we'll have a look. I'm just looking at some of the new comments. Can I explain how to have multiple video inputs from Disguise into different elements of the same notch layer? Yes, we can definitely do that. I think the smartest thing we can do to finish off this stream is we're going to look at modifying this one to work in aspect with our portrait screens. And maybe next time we will do a multiple video input notch block. So we'll stick that in the list. Okay, my machine's had a little bit of a freak out, but we've managed to kill our D3 session. Okay, great. So as I mentioned before, this is a 3D effect, so we can kind of orbit around this and see it, but it also means that kind of modifying this to our like 9:16 screen. There's a few different ways that we could do this. The first thing I think is, we want camera in the scene. I think we want to be able to control how we are looking at this, and it would be great to, I think what we really want is an exposable camera. Otherwise, we're going to have to expose all our X, Y, Z and heading pitch and bank. So we can move our camera around the scene, and if I press 5 on the keyboard here, we're in the orbit view, which is sort of like the working camera inside of Notch. If I press 0 on the keyboard, this is now what our what would be rendered if we are looking through this camera, which is kind of the default for when it gets loaded into Disguise. So we can kind of move this around. I think probably the most important thing is to set your notch up to work within the aspect of the screen you're going to send it to. So go head over to Projects, or Project, go to Rendering, change this to the resolution of the screen that we're going to send it to. And then we can modify modify the scale of our cloner. So something like that's kind of fun. So what I'm doing here is I'm modifying the position of the camera that we're looking at the scene through, and I'm modifying the way the way the cloner is sort of scaling. So if we play that, is that interesting? I'm pressing Alt on the keyboard to kind of orbit around the, I kind of feel like a clone offset by brightness. Can I overdrive this? Can I make that 10? Oh yeah, okay. Be nice for that to feel a bit more. And we're kind of losing what this is, so let's make a load more clones. Let's make that like ×5 and ×5. That feel? Yeah, that feels kind of fun. Okay, so we've modified this to work inside our. So I'm going to create a new block for my media server. Within my sort of like safe space, which we're using the desktop for today, I'd save this out as a new version. But if we no, don't load disguise. I meant to load D3 Manager there. That was a bit of a faux pas. I could force this to quit right now to speed things up, but I risk just crashing everything. So I will learn the lesson that uploading the wrong thing and just sit it out. Okay, great. Let's leave this. So we loaded our disguise project, but we hadn't modified our block. So let's come back here. Something that would have been really handy to avoid all this weirdness that I'm getting on my machine when I'm coming in and out of disguise is you can enable an application mode. So it will load disguise with just like an application bar like you see here. So we'll see that next time. Right, if I go to my desktop, here's the two versions, the one that we made originally and the modifications to our 916 screen. As I mentioned before, you only really want to have one notch block inside of your project. Otherwise, you end up like loading sort of multiple blocks and dealing with those kind of overheads. So if we'd done a load of timeline programming, what I would probably do is copy this and change its name to the same one as we had there. In fact, let's do that because it's good practice. So there we go. So now we can reload our project again. Cool. Because we use the same name for that notch block as the other one, it's just seen that as the same thing. We can play this. Why is this not? Oh, I need to create a camera. Is that right? Oh, I've broken it. What about a video cam? Maybe I didn't mean exposable camera. Maybe I just meant camera. I mean, all I'm really teaching you at this point is that you can go backwards and forwards between disguise and notch quite a lot to kind of define the block and make it work in the way that you want to do. I'm determined to make this work before we end the stream. So now that we've turned application mode on, you'll see that we can kind of treat disguise as an application and get an error. We are going to need to close this in order to be able to put a new block in there. So let's just dive back into Notch really quickly. There we go. hit 0 to see what my camera sees. I don't mind that. Okay. Once more for good luck. So again, I'm going to create a new version of this. So if for whatever reason my creative director wanted to go back to something that we did yesterday, we'd have all of those saved. I'm going to pop into my folder structure again, objects, notch file. Again, we're going to keep that name the same and grab the new one. Delete the old one. And then reload. It's a kind of unsatisfying ending to the stream, but these are the bits that we cut out when we do the tutorials. So hopefully this gives you a little bit more of a real world understanding of what you might need to get into to kind of make this all work. Great. Okay, so it is an underwhelming effect, but we've made it work. What might help make this slightly more underwhelming is increasing the scale of the spheres that we're using to create this. I don't hate that. You saw that I tried to like make that 10, but it wouldn't let me because if I right click here, you'll see that we're clamped by the minimum and maximum. If I made that maximum 10, could we totally overdrive that? Yeah, it kind of feels better. It's interesting. Amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming out and spending some time with us on the stream. As I mentioned at the start, this is something that is relatively new to us. We haven't done it since 2020 and we're in a totally new space. I should have probably mentioned that at the start. We're in the studio now. So this is a far cry from the streams that I did in my spare room back in 2020. So we're kind of relearning the reins here and relearning our equipment setup as well, because that's changed quite a bit too. But despite all the excuses, it's been really fun to sit and kind of create some stuff with you, and have appreciated you turning out and leaving all your comments and what have you. Last thing to plug, if you aren't part of this and you didn't find out about this stream because you're part of the Hive School Discord, maybe Stu or George might have dropped the link of that into the chat. If not, we'll make sure that that goes in before we end the stream. That is a place. Stu's giving me a thumbs up to say that the link's in the chat. That is a place, the community that we are trying to grow at the moment. A place where you can ask questions, leave suggestions for future tutorials and future live streams. We're going to endeavour to do more of these live streams and answer some more of your questions live. I think what I've realised today is that it's really quite, the idea that we could answer more than one question in an hour is probably a little bit ambitious. But Sam's sad that the on-air sign isn't switched on. Well, sorry, next time, Sam. Yeah, okay, so we're going to end the stream there. Thank you so much for turning up. Join us on Discord and we'll see you on a live very, very soon. Take care. Thank you.